Okay, today's lesson is Unit 3, Lesson 2, and we are talking about the composition of functions, and we're going to concentrate on doing that graphically today. But before we go on, I want to talk about what does it mean to compose functions. Okay, so when you are composing functions, or what it is when composing functions is applying the results of one function to another function. So obviously, if you're doing that, then you're going to have more than one function involved in the problem. But before we get into that, I want to talk about um, how to actually read these graphs. So the first one that we have is f of x. It is defined for x values between 0 and 5. So our graph starts up here at 0, 8, and goes all the way to 5, 3. And then over here we have g of x, and it is defined for x values between -2 and 4. -2 here, all the way following along to x equal to 4 over here. So to look at the first example, okay, so make sure you know how to actually read the graph. Okay, f of 0, all right, this number inside here, that is inside the parentheses, and we have always talked about which between x and y applies to inside the parentheses, and that is x. So this, oh, go away for a second. Go away. All right, let's try that again. Anyway, x is, this is x, all right? F of x. And so you're going to go and find 0 on the x-axis. Here's my x-axis. 0 is right here. And you go up and you find the graph, and it's equal to 8. So that is 8. That is the y-coordinate of your function. Okay, we'll circle that so you can refer back to it if you need to. Okay, so the next one I did was g of -2. Okay, g of -2 is going to be, go to my g graph. This is my g function over here, and I'm looking for -2 on the x-axis. So I go on the x-axis, I find -2, and then I got to go up or down to find my graph, my function, and it's right here, and that value is -2. So g of -2 is -2. So the next one that I have is f of g of 2, and I have a little problem because I don't have a very big a screen. So let me see how far up I can get. All right, let's try this. So f, and just to refresh your memory, okay, this is my f function, and this is my g. So if I have to do f of g of 2, okay, when you are given this number that is inside, that means you're going to start with the function that is inside. So my inside function is g, and I'm looking for g of 2. So I go over to g, I find 2 on my x-axis, and I find out it right there. That's where my function is. And what is the y-coordinate at that point? It's 0. So g of 2 is equal to 0. So I'm replacing what's in the parentheses with 0, but I still have that f. And now I go to my f graph, and I find 0, and then I find out what it is, and we've already done it. Oops, went the wrong way. My bad. And f of 0 is equal to 8. So f of 0 is equal to 8, and that is the final answer on that problem. Okay, now let's look at the next one. I think the next one I did was number 9. All right, 9 says f of g of -2. So again, I'm going to start with g of -2. So I'm going to my g graph. I'm looking for -2 on my axis, and I find it's right here. So the y-coordinate right there is -2. So that means that g of -2 is equal to -2. So I'm replacing all this inside with -2. I still have the f. And now I have to go to my f graph and find -2. Well, this is -2 right here. And if you notice, okay, there is no function, so we got two ways of looking at that. Okay, first off, the graph stops right here, so there's no graph here, but it also told you it's only defined when x is between 0 and 5. So if they're asking me for f of -2, then I'm going to answer that it is undefined. Not no solution, undefined. That's a different kind of question. Okay? All right, and so the last one I did was number 10. And number 10 says, when does f of g of x equal to 8? Well, notice here that this 8 is on the outside, so that means what I gave you was on the outside, so you're going to start on the outside of the function. And remember that this is the y value. Over here, when it's inside, that's the x value. So when I start outside, I'm going to start with that function on the outside. So I am looking, excuse me, where is my f function equal to 8? So I go back to my f function, okay? Oh, and what I said, 8 is the y value. So I'm going to go on my y-axis, and I'm going to go find where does f equal 8? Well, f equals 8 when x is 0. Okay, so when this thing on the inside is equal to 0, then I know that f of x equals 8. Well, what's on the inside is this right here. So this is what's going to be put there, and that's going to say g of x is equal to 0. So where does g equal 0? So I'm going to go to my g graph, and that 0 is the y coordinate. It's not what was in the parentheses. So where does y equal 0, and what is the value? Well, it happens right here, but it also happens right here. That's where g is 0. So we have to give both of those numbers. That number is 2, and this is an estimate's fine, -1.4, -1.5. I'll take either one. So, and again, I have to give that inside number, so x equals 2 or -1 point. Most of my classes said 5, so we'll go with 5. And that's the answer to that problem. Okay, so do your best to answer these questions. We will go over them in class. The other thing that I want to tell you is if you have any trouble reading these things, this is not the composing part of them, but actually reading these graphs. IXL is great, and it is D.4 in IXL. And ask it to you both ways, so it's really good. So I hope you will do that. Email me or come see me if you have any questions.